course, the first question we have to ask you as a leadership candidate is have you ever taken cocaine?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever taken drugs at all?
Oh, I've said yesterday I'd tried blow, pot, marijuana,
Blow?
whatever.
Blow's cocaine.
Well, then that's the wrong word. Not where I come from, it wasn't.
Oh, OK.
OK,
So
you've...
marijuana.
And on many occasions?
No, I was, you know, like anybody else who at university or what have you, tried it. Yes, you've tried it.
But Michael Gove says several times, and no one's sure if that means twice or 100. Do you think the language should be more precise from candidates? Should you all be facing up to this now, given it's become a big issue?
Well, I think this is the age of transparency. I think people have said what they've done, and then I think the public will decide, you know, what they think, and equally so will MPs decide. But what I hope is that people will also look at what, you know, Michael Gove has done as a minister and as a Secretary of State, and not judge him purely on what he did.
Well, they'd like to, but right now, the
politics.
charge against Michael Gove is that he's been a rank hypocrite. He's been in charge of education and the Justice Department, and with teachers, for example, he enhanced a rather draconian policy where if teachers had transgressed with Class A drugs, they could be banned for life. So the argument which we're getting from our viewers very strongly is if it's one rule for him and one rule for everybody else, that is, to them, disqualifying.
Well, I think that's where people have maybe made a judgment on hypocrisy, because nobody likes that. But
is he a hypocrite?
Well, what he's written and what he's done, you know, it does seem that way. However, what I do hope is that people can judge him on what he's done now, and that'll be what comes forward, what people have done before. It was prior to them being in politics and how that is viewed.
But, you just suggested he's a hypocrite. I mean, why would we want a hypocrite as Prime Minister?
Well, that will be what MPs decide when they vote and what the public
but our
later
poll
decide.
is 83% now, and a big vote. Many thousands voting.
50,400 at the moment.
50,000 already, and 83% saying he's unfit to be Prime Minister because of this revelation.
Well, he will take that on board as he goes forward in this race, as will other MPs. But obviously, I came on because my vision and what I want to do is very different. I want to help police, want to put $3 billion to support police. I want to give $4 billion straight away to support schools, and I also want to do a public sector pay guarantee. So what I'm on and why I want to stand is for a very different reason. But I appreciate people are interested in this.
So you've used marijuana, cannabis?
Yes, I've tried it.
And do you think that it should be legalised in order to take that pressure off police, for instance?
No, I haven't looked to it to be legalised, no.
Why not?
Because what I don't want to see is a potential gateway going forward for, you know, maybe an entrance to other drugs. So I wouldn't do that. However, I do know people...
You didn't use it as a gateway to other drugs, though, did you?
No, I didn't. So I know there will possibly be like a royal charter, an investigation into how and what we should be doing as our drugs policy. But I, like I said, wouldn't be looking to change anything.
Do you think people hold politicians to too high a standard?
Probably and possibly. I mean, it's what maybe they'd want the ideal person to be who's doing that job. But as I said, we live in an age of transparency now. People are asking questions, people will give you the answer, and then people can judge that. But like I said, for me, coming forward on a platform of how do we support regular workers up and down the country? So that's what I want to do. So I meet on a daily, weekly basis. I'm doing a pub tour for my blue-collar Conservatives, meeting with people saying, what is important to you? And I have to say, what they're saying is what's important to them is getting more police on the ground. What they're also saying is making sure that our schools are funded properly. And like I said, and what I'm looking to do is give a public sector pay guarantee for our public sector workers who I think have worked incredibly hard to get the finances of the country back
What people
on
are
track,
saying, all right,
and now to give them a pay reward.
But what people are saying to us today is, all right, ask Esther McVey about universal credit and the massive problems with that, which led to a surge in people going to food banks. I mean, I find it extraordinary in this country that we could be the 6th richest economy in the world and we have food banks at all, let alone that the numbers using them surged. You were partly responsible for this policy, which led to people going to food banks. Why should people want you to be Prime Minister, given that the horrendous difficulties that you had with that?
OK, well, there's a couple of things. Obviously, universal credit came into existence because the old benefit wasn't working. It locked people out of work at 16 hours, 24 hours, 30 hours. So it was a barrier to work. And do you know what? If you did go into work, the tax rates were over 90%, so it stopped people going into work. So what we did, and actually universal credit got cross-party support on what it does. So
well,
people
your successor, Amber Rudd, said in February, it's absolutely clear that there were challenges with the initial rollout of universal credit. The main issue that led to an increase in food bank use was that people had difficulty accessing their money early enough. I mean, again, the idea that there was a surge in people having to go to food banks, that kids are going to school without a meal, hungry, because directly as a result of a policy that you were presiding over.
So let me say...
It's pretty shameful, isn't it?
So what happened...
Did you feel ashamed that that was happening?
Well, let's see what happened. So when I wasn't in Parliament in 2016, that's when those votes were carried through to take an extra 12 billion out of universal credit. Those were George Osborne's ideas, and obviously Amber would have voted for that. I wasn't around. So when I came back in, and it's a very difficult brief, as we know, my whole job for that 8 months was to actually reverse that and to get a lot more money into the system, which I did. So roughly half of that money I got back in. And so that was because I went to Cabinet and very clearly I said, you know what, you've made it too now, it's too tight, as I'd say, the system. And we need to get more money into the system, of which the Chancellor actually relented, listened to me, and then he put in at his budget an extra £4.5 billion, and that was to help working people. So actually I fought for the full 8 months I was there to reverse those. But I have to say, at the same time, it was a new benefit system that everybody agreed with, and we got, at the same time, 3.5 million more people into work. That's 1 million people each, 1,000 people each and every day. And at the same time, I created something known as disability confidence, because I wanted to support disabled people, and we helped an extra 1 million disabled people into work. So you've got to look at the system in the round. And equally,
do you think that it's been a success, a system that is supposed to help people on benefits, and people end up using food banks in record numbers?
Well, the benefit system, actually, the universal credit, has been a success in supporting the most vulnerable. More money goes there, and obviously getting people into work. But what I will say, where it hasn't worked for people, then, you know, I do apologise, that is wrong, and that's why we tried to make the system a lot better. And, you know, unfortunately...
So
do you agree
usage
it's
across the world.
A scandal that anyone in this country has to go to a food bank?
Yes, I do. And actually, back in 2012...
So the fact the numbers went up, Esther, under a Conservative government, repeatedly went up, I mean, that's completely shameful, isn't it?
No, so what I did... Well, of course you wouldn't want it to go up, but you have to...
It literally doubled in a number of a couple of years. I mean,
you have to look
any
at
government
those
that presides over a doubling of people going to food banks is such a scandalous situation.
So
why should we trust the Conservatives, frankly, on this issue, given that's what happened?
Well, you have to look at why people go to food banks, which is why I put extra support in.
It's because they're hungry.
But people go there for all different reasons. Some people could be addicted to...
Addicted?
Could be addicted to drugs or alcohol and a need. Some people could be in abusive relationships and running away, and they need an immediate...
Or they could find themselves without enough money and they have to go and get free
That's
food.
Right. And there are many reasons why people don't have enough money. So what we've got to do, you're quite right, is support people straight away, which is what I did, that you can get money immediately.
You have caused some controversy with your support for the parents who do not want their children to be in this LGBT primary school classes. Why do you have an issue with primary school children being taught that some children have two mummies, two daddies, that gay campaigners and gay people think is a really important part of diversity education?
Because that isn't what I said or what I believe. So that's wrong. I was asked a question, do I believe that parents have the say in what is age appropriate for their child when they are 4 and 5 in primary school? And yes, I do. But I embrace that LGBT is taught within sex education. That was not the question. The question was, who has a say over what is age appropriate for their 4-year-old. And some parents might think, oh, my 4-year-old is young, and maybe not now. And I also think, why put a teacher under that? Why should a teacher have to decide what is age appropriate for that child? So it's a very separate a question I was given an answer to.
You don't think kids should be taught about any of this stuff till they're 16, is that right?
I think secondary school's a different matter, but what I was talking about is for 4 or 5. Now, if it was my child, then the odds are I'd say, that's fine. But I believe in choice, and that choice has to be what the parent
Right, but
wants.
as you know, the furore is mainly being driven by Muslim families who have a clear position about homosexuality, that it's sinful and wrong. Now, do you share that view?
No, I don't share that view. The only view I share is that parents of their own child, for the ages of 4 and 5, have the say in that. It's about what is age appropriate.
But if
it was not what was being taught,
there will be kids in these schools who come now from same-sex relationships and marriages. Right? And the idea behind this from the teachers is not to teach them about sexuality, but to teach them about the reality of relationships in this country, where not everyone has a mum and dad. Yeah. And that's the point of it. But I mean, I've got a 7-year-old daughter. She completely understands that some people have 2 dads, because there are some people that she's with who have 2 dads.
And that's correct. And I don't, as I said, that wasn't the issue. And you, as a parent, have said, that's fine for my child. And I'm not actually, but if I were a parent, I'd say that is fine. But I do believe in choice. And by the way, this shouldn't be, Justine Greening, the Secretary of State of Education, presided over this. The Conservatives have presided over this. Labour has presided over this. That parents have the final say for very young children.
You're from Irish Catholic descent, but are you a Catholic yourself?
No, my parents are, but actually they thought they'd let me choose.
Are you religious?
Not particularly, no.
Do you believe in God?
I think I do, yes.
You think you do?
Yes, I do. I'd like to believe.
You either believe in God or you don't you?
No, but I don't have a particular, as I would say, religious faith. But I would like to believe there is some.
What do you think of Jeremy Hunt wanting to reduce the legal time limit for abortion from 24 weeks to 12 weeks?
Well, that was his choice, and as he said, he's not changing the law on that. That was.
But what do you think of that choice?
I wouldn't be going to that limit. I'd probably say, and lots of people were looking at 20 weeks for reasons as, we have technological advances. If a baby could survive at that number of weeks, well, maybe to there, and that's sort of been in the House before.
But when he says nothing past 12 weeks...
Well, that's what he said.
Many women will find that horrifying, that this man may be Prime Minister, but says that nobody can have an abortion in this country after 12 weeks.
But obviously, as I said, he wouldn't make that law, and it would have to go through
you'd have to trust him that he wouldn't try and force that through. But, I mean, the personal beliefs of a Prime Minister are really important, I think. It's all very well saying this as a minister or as an MP. When you're actually the Prime Minister of the country and you believe that no woman should be allowed a legal abortion past 12 weeks, that will send a shudder through many women in this country.
Well, when you get him on, he can explain why that is.
But do you disagree with it?
I've said I wouldn't be looking at 12 weeks. I believe, fundamentally, as a Conservative, we believe in choice. We believe in freedom of the individual, freedom of expression, responsibility and choice, and also self-empowerment.
Final question.
And social mobility.
You believe we can leave with no deal on Brexit. You're even prepared to prorogue Parliament, a word none of us had heard of until last week, which means you basically get rid of Parliament with the Queen's agreement and start again. Many people say that's impractical, that no deal will be a disaster. What do you say?
Well, I've said that the withdrawal agreement is now dead. It does not exist. It wasn't wanted in the Parliament. It's not wanted by the public. Therefore, to be out on the 31st of October, which is key, so we don't have this corrosive uncertainty in the country and for business, then we have to go out without a withdrawal agreement. There is no time in the House or in the public to renegotiate that. And also the EU said you can't renegotiate it. So the only way that you can come out is on that date, and that will be without the withdrawal agreement. But just one thing, when we talked about proroguing, what seems most hypocritical to me is that people who didn't want the will of the people to go through that democratic referendum, whether that was Yvette Cooper or Oliver Letwin, they did everything they could. They ripped up the rule book to defy what the people wanted. So why is it I'm just wanting to enable the vote of the people to go through, and I've said I will use every tool in the armoury, but proroguing would not be what you'd choose to do. I'm saying you'd use every tool in your army to deliver, that vote for the people.